Well, it's the end of Bill Whittle's childhood. Hi, I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle Now. And Bill, Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, the final in the 9-episode series of movies that started when you were but a youth. And now it is coming to its ultimate climax. And while there may be other spin-off products, including things like The Mandalorian, which is now on TV, this is the end of the saga as George Lucas originally envisioned it. And because you're such a fan of this, and because you see connections that take it beyond just being a cinematic work, I thought I'd get your reflections on what it means to get to this final stage, to this final episode of the journey. And as we record this, the movie's coming out this weekend, and I'm sure it'll do big box office, but will also be a lot of critics.
It will not be big box office.
It will not be big box office. Interesting.
No, it will not be big box office. The ticket sales are already way down. You said the end of my youth. To be just for the sake of the record, I'm more of a Star Trek guy. I'm a little bit older. I saw Star Wars in '77 in a drive-in theater, so I was what was I? 18 then, I think. 18. I have been working, as some of you may know, on a 10-part podcast on the Cold War, which has been taking up all of my writing time right after the Apollo 11 thing. And I say this only to say that this Star Wars thing is going to get real special treatment by me. I mean, an in-depth look at this, a specific video like that. So let me just kind of outline some of those points. I'm planning on calling it How and Why Star Wars Had to Die. So let's talk about the why first.
Well, it's the end of the series, Bill. It's not dying.
No,
it's just the end of the series.
No. It's the end of the franchise. It's the end of the franchise. The Mandalorian is a last-minute response to how I almost said how badly bungled the Star Wars final trilogy was, but my contention is it wasn't bungled. That's what it was designed to do. And so The Mandalorian has gotten what used to be an approval rating of 100% up to 4 or 5% now on the part of fans. But Star Wars died in 2017 with The Last Jedi, and it died for a specific reason, and how it died is really important. So first, the why. Star Wars is the religion of post-Christian America. In a society where going to church is frowned upon and makes you stupid and you're kind of racist and a bigot and all the rest of it, Star Wars has filled the religious gap in an entire generation's life. It's filled it, and it's not surprising because when you talk about Star Wars fans, you're not talking about people who talk about the movie. I mean, they go to the movies and they see the movies, but the movies are just the launching pad. There's thousands of pieces of fan fiction and all the action figures and all. And it's just an obsession, and it's an obsession because it's a religion, and it's a religion because it has all of the elements of a religion.
So when you say this, Bill, you're not talking about the religion being the actual religion in the movie.
No. I'm talking about Star Wars as an effect. Thank you for clarifying. Star Wars as a phenomenon, as a cultural phenomenon, was a religious experience, was a religious phenomenon in this country, and I can certainly make this case. It had all the aspects of religion. You had a Messiah, you had a wise old prophet, you had the devil incarnate, you had an afterlife, you had prophecies, you had all of the stuff that, and most important, you had a moral code, you had an ethical code, and furthermore, for those people out there who are either just kind of having fun on the edges or who genuinely are a little off the side, not only did you have a moral code for good, but you had a moral code for evil too. You actually had Satanism in the form of the Sith. You had people, if they wanted to go to the dark side and either as fun just to play or because they really appealed to them, whatever, they had that too. So it's a religion. And the religion had to be destroyed, not because a non-secular religion needs to be destroyed. This is exactly what the people who want a state want. They want people to have a religion that is not based on God. But this one was not going to do. This one was not serviceable for what the progressive left wanted. And the reason for that is very simple, and that is that the first 3 movies, the original trilogy, which is called Star Wars, I refuse to call it A New Hope, Star Wars, The Return, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. Those 3 movies together, if you take them as one movie, because it is, you get practically perfect, almost perfect telling of the journey of the hero story, which is so deep in our subconscious. It's Western subconscious. It is so much a part of everything that we do. It's Lord of the Rings and Superman and Arthur, all of it. It's all the exact same story told again and again and again. And this story is predicated on the journey of a hero. And a hero is an individual. And you cannot have individuals in a society that is determined to make everybody into cogs in a state. You can't have a religion that talks about a person fighting against a nameless state, a nobody coming out of nowhere, working hard and suffering setbacks and being knocked down and getting up again and knocked down again. You can't have that in a society where everybody's a faceless cog and everybody gets a trophy and everybody's a Jedi master and everybody can fly a starfighter. No, you can't have that. So it has to be destroyed. And you certainly cannot have that if the protagonist is a young, white, straight male. That's got to go. So the entire ethic of Star Wars, rebellion against a state, good versus evil, no question about good versus evil. When we see evil, it's a 7-foot-tall Nazi, for God's sakes, with a skull for a face. How much more on the nose do you need to be? But people liked it because it was a clear moral code, and most importantly, it was fun. You know, George Lucas set that story a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, specifically so that we wouldn't be talking about social justice issues and how this affects the Palestinians. No. So it had to be destroyed. And people think that it was destroyed. Many people, I've been watching this very closely on YouTube. All of the Star Wars fans think that it was destroyed for money. That it was destroyed because Disney was greedy and just wanted to wring every last dollar out of the fans. I suspect that was a part of it, but that's not the major motivation for it. It had to be destroyed because it was in the way of people like Kathleen Kennedy and all the rest of people like her who were convinced that the Force is female and that all of this feminist trope about how women are strong as men, stronger really, and better than men and so on, all of this stuff had to be inserted into the religious core of American society in the 21st century.
Bill, do you think this is happening? Do you think this is leading or following? In essence, is Star Wars just now a reflection, or the newer movies more of a reflection of what's happened in society? Or do you think that society's not there yet and Star Wars wants to get us there?
Could you say that last sentence again?
I said that, do you think that the movies as you see them, I mean, you go after them as if Kathleen Kennedy and these other people had some place that they wanted to take the American public.
There is no question
if the
about
American
that.
public's already gone there and Kathleen Kennedy's just trying to be a reflection of where we are.
Well, now we get down to the actual good news in the middle of all this. Having watched the arc of this, we saw 3 great movies that inspired an entire generation with religious feelings, and they had no other religious feelings to compare it to, so that's what they did. You see 35, 40-year-old men working in insurance companies or they're vice presidents of marketing someplace, and they've got a Luke Skywalker action figure on their computer because they have always had one. So the question is not, did the movies reflect the changing society? Because now we're on to the real, actual important part. Because if they did, they'd become more and more successful. And Ghostbusters 2016 would have been a hit. And having, although it hasn't come out yet, we already know how it's going to go. The new James Bond, which is a black woman, would be a hit. And Captain Marvel, who has all these magical powers, would have been a hit. And all of the stuff that they're trying to shove down our throats would have been hits, but they're not. And they're not only business failures. Solo was a business failure as a direct result of how badly insulted Star Wars fans were by The Last Jedi.
Bill, you could attribute that just to the difficulty of milking a franchise for that long. I mean, that may have nothing to do with these cultural forces you're talking about. It's just hard to keep a story going that long and keep people interested.
You talk about milking a franchise. This entire cohort, this entire generation was lining up with $100 bills in their hands, begging to be milked. It's not milking a franchise. They said, after Solo failed, they said, well, we're sending them out too fast. We're putting out too many a year. Please, you could put out a new Star Wars movie every other week or every week, and people would tune into it and watch it, and they'd go to the movies and spend big bucks on it. And we know this is true because they finally did it with The Mandalorian after taking this thing so close to death that I don't think it can recover. Nevertheless, this idea that they're just basically no, this was something people were determined to have. So you had the first three movies that were great. You had the second three movies that were terrible. They were bad movies, but they didn't destroy Star Wars. They just lowered expectations, and they were kind of a disappointment, but they weren't what the last three were. Really, when I say the last three, I mean Episode 8, which Episode 7 set up. Episode 8 completely went off the rails, completely off on Rian Johnson's own thing, with Kathleen Kennedy's not only support, but not even just enthusiasm, but desires, and destroyed Star Wars. And here's what I'm saying when I say the case of why it had to be destroyed, I think I've made. And now we have to talk about how it was destroyed. If you make three bad movies, or if this last trilogy had been three bad movies, just bad movies, then you'd have fans who are like, well, at least we saw some special effects and we got some new stuff added to canon. Now we can discuss whether or not, this or that or so on, and the Battle of Jakku and all the rest of the stuff. But that's not what they did. In Episode 8, they unmade Star Wars. And this is the thing you have to understand. It was unmade. And this was not a financial decision to make money. This was a political decision. This is a political decision by people who have more money than they'll ever be able to spend, multi-millionaires who don't care about the box office as much as they care about being able to go to their cocktail parties at the Hollywood Hills and show how virtuous they are. And so Star Wars not only had to be destroyed, ended, they had to do more than end it. They had to go back and undo it. And up until this last movie, which is opening in a couple days as we record this, I thought that the entire purpose was to undo the Luke Skywalker legend. They had to go back like a dentist pulling out a cavity. They had to go and drill around it and completely remove it. And what I mean by that is, if the cultural hero of a generation is a farm boy who decides he wants to be something bigger than that, and becomes, by the end of it, essentially the ruler of the galaxy. By the end of the third Star Wars movie, it's kind of what he is. And he throws away his sword. He doesn't use his sword. He's past that now. He's filled with hope and optimism. If you have that character as an example for people, the people are going to get funny ideas. So that hero had to be not just killed and not just ended. He had to be undone. And by undoing him, they turned Luke Skywalker from an optimistic, brave, idealistic optimist into a grumpy, murderous, bitter, angry, charmless old hermit. Luke Skywalker was destroyed.
Did they then transfer our admiration to the stormtroopers and the clones?
No, they did not. They were planning on. Not only did Luke have to be destroyed, I'll get right to that. So they went back and they unmade him. And because of the nature of fandom, which has many, many millions of people writing things and talking about things while everybody's arguing, well, the term is canon, as in canonical scripture and so on. The question then became, well, what's canon? Well, if it's in a Star Wars movie, by God, that's canon. That means it's part of the universe. It's real. And what they did was they went in there and they scooped out that character and they made the end of his life so pathetic and his death so meaningless. Same with Han Solo. Meaningless. He's just stabbed in an alley, basically. Might as well have been mugged. Han Solo going to die. If Harrison Ford wanted to get out of the movies, and he does, then Han Solo should die by taking the Millennium Falcon directly into the mouth of the Star Killer thing and saving the frickin' galaxy. That's how Han Solo's supposed to die, but he just knifed on a causeway somewhere by his emo son. So I had thought, no, that's it. I had thought that the end goal was to destroy the Luke Skywalker story, and they did that. And I watched the fandom go from eagerness to concern to anger to rage, and now they're at a place to grieving. And now they're at a place where they just don't care anymore. They just don't care. So
what percentage of the people who go to see such movies do you think these hardcore fans are? Because you could make all this argument in saying they destroyed the franchise and this matters. But the vast majority of people who go to see movies aren't, psychoanalyzing this or culturally analyzing it the way you're doing. They just go to see a fun movie.
Yes. And that's what they have done. They have turned Star Wars, best case scenario, into a fun movie. But it was never a fun movie. There are lots of fun movies. I've seen 400 fun movie since I was since 1977. I've seen one movie that has affected the culture the way this had, that walked into an empty space in our culture the way Star Wars did and simply took it over. This is not a movie. This is my entire point. It's why we're having the discussion. We're not talking about whether or not the new Ghostbusters is going to be any good or not. It looks like it might be, but that doesn't matter because it's Ghostbusters. It's not Star Wars. Star Wars and Star Trek, which has been fading out for a long time now, it's the religion of the country. So let me just add one final thing. I had thought that the destruction of the Luke Skywalker character was their goal. And I realized, no, I had underestimated just how rotten these people are. The destruction of Luke Skywalker was the first half of their goal. The second half of their goal was to replace Luke Skywalker. When I say replace him, I don't mean replace him from this point forward. I mean going back in time and replacing him with their Skywalker, which is Rey, who's a woman, very strong woman. And she's so strong that she does everything. She's never held a lightsaber before, and in the first movie, picks up a lightsaber for the first time and defeats the new villain, which is like Luke Skywalker being out there in the middle of his moisture farm, finding a lightsaber on the ground, walking up and defeating Darth Vader. But she doesn't need training, you see, because she's a woman. And then she gets in the Millennium Falcon. She's never flown a starship before in her life, but she's a master of this thing, and she knows more about it than Han Solo, who lived in the ship for 40 years. And she flies it better than he ever did because she's a powerful woman. And if you think about it, by having her be master of the lightsaber and the Millennium Falcon, she is basically both Han Solo and Luke Skywalker combined into one magnificent creature. And she never loses, and she never suffers, and there's no setbacks, because that would be harming to women's self-esteem. You can't have a man lecture them on how to be a Jedi. They don't need to be lectured by anybody. They're born into Jedis. Rey is the quintessential example of this culture that has given an achievement award to everybody. She doesn't have to work for it. She doesn't have to earn it. And neither does Captain Marvel or the rest of these feminist figures. They just have it. They just have it. It's been given to them. See? Nothing to it. And what is the most appalling...
They do have this internal angst about who they really are, though.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
I'm not saying they have an actual struggle, but they, in the trailer, Rey says something like, everybody thinks they know me, they don't know me.
Well, and when the fans heard that line from the trailer, there was an enormous cultural guffaw went up. And they say, everybody thinks they know me, they don't know me. And everybody said, this because there's nobody to know. What would we know about you? You've never failed. We've never seen you lose. We've never seen you, all you do is do things perfectly and go from here to there and do what the script bends its will to for you. But to finish the point, what they are trying to do and failing spectacularly at, but what the plan was to take the Luke Skywalker story about a young man, and I hate to say this, this is not how I look at people, but this is the way the cards are being dealt from the left these days. A young, white, male, Christian, heterosexual. When I say Christian, he's got religious beliefs because he becomes the Messiah, basically. And they had not only had to destroy him, I realize now they had to destroy him so that his space could be taken by their version of Luke. And the last line in this movie, by all accounts, is Rey, who's descended from the Emperor, apparently. She's apparently the granddaughter of the evil Emperor. She's the granddaughter of Source Evil, okay? She's the direct linear descendant of Source Evil. Luke Skywalker is the linear descendant of Source Good. And so Luke Skywalker has been destroyed. He's out of there. The last line in the Rise of Skywalker.
Are you going to do a spoiler here?
Oh yeah, is because nobody's going to go. The last line is where somebody asks Rey after the final battle and she wins again. She's beaten the bad guy 3 times in a row. What a dramatic arc that is. But the last line is some woman comes up to her and says, "What's your name?" And she says, "Rey." And she says, "Rey Skywalker." And the audience is supposed to think that she's taking over the mantle of Luke. But Luke's already been destroyed. She is the Skywalker now, you see. She is. She's the hero. And she's done nothing to earn being a hero, and that's why the social justice crowd had to go back and scoop out Luke Skywalker, pull him completely out of the picture, destroy him retroactively, and then insert Rey into his place. So when she says at the end of this movie, my name is Skywalker, what you've got now is you've got a linear descendant of the devil saying that I'm the Messiah. And people are supposed to believe it. And the good news is they don't. They don't believe it. They are filled with rage. And I'm not saying that the destruction of Star Wars has made that entire millennial generation into conservatives, but I guarantee you it has made them loathe and despise everything about the SJW crowd. And this is a gambit on the part of the left that is going to bite them very, 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 very hard.
Ladies and gentlemen, this conversation that you just enjoyed was brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com, who pay actually on a monthly or annual basis because they want to advance great ideas, time-tested principles around the world, across the United States. If you'd like to become one of them, go to BillWhittle.com, click the Become a Member link. You can also support us on Patreon if you prefer to do it that way at patreon.com/BillWhittle. And by the way, we're going on a cruise in May of 2020. And if you'd like to join us and see live productions of your favorite BillWhittle.com shows, plus get to hang out with the stars of these shows. And by the way, I mean our fellow members as the stars of these shows. Then you can check that out at BillWhittleCruise.com. We'll put a link in the description below.
And we're doing a pop culture seminar on the first full night out at sea. We got a whole night just to talk about this kind of stuff.
Under the stars. It will be magnificent. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott.